The twin sons of Thyra 7 had long disappeared below jagged cliffs when Lior Kane crept along the edge of the mining colony. The wind cut across the barren rocks, sharp and cold, but she barely noticed it. Her small hands clutched a cracked scanner she had found among the abandoned drills. Everyone else stayed inside, fearing the XYRTH patrols. Everyone except her. The XYRTH were merciless. Their crystalline bodies shimmered like broken mirrors in space, and their minds worked with cold, precise logic. Entire colonies had vanished before any human could even sound an alarm. Adults whispered about surrender. They said resistance was foolish. They said humans could not hope to match the aliens. But Lior's heart would not accept that. She had grown up believing in something stronger than fear, courage. Her eyes flicked to the horizon. Something stirred in the deep crater below the cliffs, the one the miners avoided. Legend spoke of Zephyr, the dragon chained there by the XYRTH long before anyone could remember. A creature of fire and scale, it had once terrorized fleets of alien ships. Then it had vanished. Now strange roars echoed from the pit, low and trembling at first, then rising into a scream that shook the rocks. Lior froze. Her heart raced. Adults would have turned back. Adults would have hidden. But she did not. She wanted to see. She needed to see. Even from a distance, the dragon was enormous, its wings folded yet stretching beyond the crater edges. Scars marred its scales, glimmering silver in the dim light. Chains of black alloy wrapped around its limbs and neck, humming with energy fields that burned anything that touched them. Even the XYRTH soldiers avoided it. Lior's stomach twisted. How could something so terrifying still exist, still survive? Fear rose in her chest, but it was different now, sharp, exciting. The rest of her small body thrummed with a single stubborn thought. This could be the way to help her colony. If she could reach it, if she could free it, maybe humans could fight back. A low, guttural growl made her jump. The dragon's head turned slowly toward her. Its eyes burned like molten metal. Lior froze, staring back. She felt something she hadn't expected. It was not only fear she saw reflected there, but recognition. The creature was aware, intelligent, calculating. And somehow she felt it understood her courage, or at least her curiosity. The scanner in her hand beeped nervously, picking up strange energy readings from the chains. Lior's mind raced. The adults had no tools, no knowledge to challenge the XYRTH. But humans could think. Humans could adapt. She ran a few quick calculations in her head. If she could time the patrols, understand the dragon's patterns and find a weak spot in the chains, maybe, just maybe, she could reach it. A shadow flickered across the crater. 2 XYRTH drones swept past, scanning for any movement. Lior ducked behind a jagged rock, heart hammering. If they saw her, it would be over. The drone's crystalline limbs reflected the faint moonlight, cold and deadly. She waited, barely breathing. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the drones moved past. Lior exhaled slowly, though her pulse still raced. She had survived the first test. The wind carried another roar, louder, sharper. The dragon's wings twitched as if sensing her presence. Lior's fingers tightened around the scanner. She had to learn it. She had to understand it. Adults might see only danger, but humans saw opportunity. Humans saw the impossible and refused to turn away. She crept closer to the edge, peering over the precipice. The chains sparked faintly where they dug into the rock. The dragon's eyes followed her, unblinking. Its chest rose and fell with immense strength. Lior felt a twinge of fear and awe. It was a creature born to dominate entire star systems, yet it was trapped. Yet it still breathed, still lived. And somewhere in that great fiery gaze it seemed to hope. A sudden flash of light streaked across the crater floor. An XYRTH energy cannon fired into the pit, sparks scattering across the rock. The dragon roared, wings flaring, smoke curling from its nostrils. Lior stumbled backward, her heart thudding. She had no weapon, no shield, only courage. And yet, she felt it rise inside her stronger than fear. She had to try. The colony depended on it. Maybe even more than the colony, maybe all humans did. The roar faded, but the tension remained. Lior crouched low, plotting her next move. She could see a narrow ledge winding down toward the chains. It would be dangerous, nearly impossible, but if she could get close, maybe she could make a difference. The thought thrilled her. She swallowed hard. Every step forward would be a gamble. Every misstep could cost her life. But she did not step back. Humans did not step back. Humans faced the impossible, and Lior was human. The wind howled around her, carrying the dragon's distant, mournful cries. Lior's eyes locked on the ledge. She took a deep breath, feeling courage push her forward, even as the unknown waited below. Something ancient and terrifying stirred in the crater, something that could destroy her in an instant, or become her greatest ally. She started to move. One careful, trembling step. Then another. The first real move toward a danger no human had ever faced, and a hope no human had ever dared imagine. Lior's small boots scraped against the jagged ledge as she edged downward toward the crater floor. Every step was a gamble. Below, the dragon's massive form shifted, chains rattling against the rock with a metallic screech. Sparks danced where the energy fields hummed, lighting its glimmering scales and ghostly flashes. Lior's heart thudded so loudly she thought the dragon might hear it. But she couldn't stop. Fear was sharp, but determination burned sharper. Humans survived where others faltered because they refused to back down. She had observed the patrols carefully for days. The XYRTH moved in strict, predictable patterns, their drones scanning in precise rotations. She knew exactly when a gap would appear, a 30-second window before the next sweep. 30 seconds wasn't much, but humans could act fast. Humans could think. Humans could take impossible risks and turn them into triumphs. Lior counted the seconds in her head as she inched closer. A low rumble made her freeze. Zypher's wings twitched again, the air trembling from the sheer weight of them. The dragon's eyes followed her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Lior swallowed. It wasn't a mindless animal, not a weapon of destruction to be tamed by fear. It was thinking, feeling, calculating. And if she could reach it, she could turn its intelligence toward survival, toward freedom. The first obstacle was a patrol drone swooping low. Lior flattened herself against the rock, barely daring to breathe. The drone's crystalline body shimmered, scanning the ledge. Her fingers grazed a small, broken pipe nearby. On a hunch, she twisted it into a short, sharp spike and flicked it toward the rock face below. Sparks hit the ground, drawing the drone's attention away just long enough for her to slip past. Her heart raced. It was a tiny victory, but humans survived on tiny victories that others overlooked. She reached a narrow platform overlooking the chains. The energy fields hummed louder here, almost palpable. Lior studied them quickly. Each pulse followed a pattern, brief flickers, then a longer rest. Timing would be everything. A single misstep and she could be burned alive. She crouched, waiting for the next flicker. When it came, she dashed across the platform, sliding past the sparks and gripping a loose chain as if it were a lifeline. Zypher's eyes widened at her audacity. The dragon growled softly, a low, questioning rumble. Lior froze, staring back. She wasn't trying to hurt it. She wanted to help. She whispered under her breath, "I'm not your enemy. I just want to help you." It was foolish, maybe even insane. But sometimes human courage wasn't measured in size or strength. It was measured in belief, in the refusal to turn away from impossible odds. The ledge ended at a jagged outcropping, the only place where she could reach the lower chains. Lior gritted her teeth, calculating every move in fractions of a second. She slid down the rock, letting gravity carry her while keeping her weight light on the spikes of jagged stone. Sparks flew past her arm, scorching the air. Her fingers were raw, her boots scraped, but she didn't stop. Humans could endure. Humans could endure what others would not. Just as she reached the base, a patrol cruiser dropped from above. Its energy beam lanced toward the dragon, striking the ground where she had been moments before. The blast shook the crater, throwing loose rocks into the air. Lior pressed herself flat, heart hammering in her chest. Zypher reared its massive head and roared, the sound deafening, shaking the very walls of the crater. Lior could feel the heat even from her crouch, tasted on the wind. The moment passed. The cruiser moved on. Lior exhaled slowly, but she didn't relax. She was too close now. Too committed. She studied the chains, the black alloy glinting with alien energy. She noticed something no XYRTH engineer had considered. A small joint where two links joined under the dragon's foreleg. It was nearly imperceptible, but it could be weakened with leverage. Humans noticed things that aliens ignored. Humans could turn the smallest flaw into a chance at survival. Her makeshift tools were crude. A jagged piece of metal, some wire, and her own determination. She wedged the metal into the joint and twisted, sweat stinging her eyes. Sparks erupted, and the dragon shifted nervously, flames licking the air. But Lior held her ground. One link bent slightly. She twisted again, heart pounding. Another tiny movement. And then, a soft, metallic snap. One link had bent. Freedom was a fraction closer. Suddenly the ground shook violently. A patrol drone had spotted movement nearby, firing an energy net that hissed and crackled as it slammed against the rock. Lior ducked instinctively. Zephyr roared, whipping its tail, knocking debris and sparks aside. It was no longer just a prisoner, it was a force. But the XYRH would not give up. They never gave up. And Lior knew the danger was far from over. She glanced at the dragon, eyes locking with its molten gaze. The creature had understood something. Human courage was not empty. It was a spark. It could ignite even the darkest chains. And if she could survive the next moments, if she could reach the dragon's trust, then maybe, just maybe, humans could fight back. Her fingers tightened on the chain. Her heart pounded like a drum in the silent crater. The next move would decide everything. One misstep could mean death. One correct choice could change the fate of her colony, and perhaps the galaxy itself. With a deep breath, Lior began to climb the chain inch by inch toward Zephyr's massive body. Sparks flew, energy hummed, and somewhere deep inside, the dragon's rumble echoed like a challenge, or an invitation. The adventure had truly begun. Lior's hands ached, raw from gripping the black alloy chains, but she didn't stop. Every inch of upward movement brought her closer to Zephyr's massive, glimmering head. The dragon's eyes never left her, molten orbs of fire and intelligence tracking her every move. It was aware. Every breath she took, every shiver in the rock, it sensed. And somehow she knew it was judging her, not as prey, not as an enemy, but as something else. Something human. The XYRH patrols were still overhead, drones sweeping like silent predators. Lior kept low, pressing her body close to the chain, calculating every shift of weight, every pulse of the energy fields around the links. Timing had always been her weapon. Human intuition, honed by instinct and logic, could find patterns that alien precision missed. 30 seconds of gap between patrols, 30 seconds to act. She counted in her head, steadying her racing pulse. Zephyr growled, a deep, vibrating sound that made the ground beneath Lior tremble. Her stomach lurched, but she did not retreat. Fear was present, yes, but determination was stronger. Humans survived not by ignoring fear but by moving through it. She whispered softly, her voice barely audible over the dragon's rumble, "I'm here to help. I don't want to hurt you." The dragon's eyes narrowed, smoke curling from its nostrils. Its tail lashed against a chain, rattling the rock. Lior flinched, but she held her ground. The creature's intelligence was evident. It was trying to understand her, to read her intentions. Every human step, every gesture was being measured. If she failed here, it would end, not just her life but the chance for the colony, for humans, to claim even a spark of victory. Her fingers found a small protrusion on the chain, a weakened point near the dragon's foreleg. Carefully she wedged her tool into the joint and twisted, sparks flying. Zephyr's growl turned sharper, more questioning than threatening. Lior froze, holding the metal steady. The dragon shifted its massive head closer, nostrils flaring, smoke curling across her face. She met its gaze, unwavering. Humans could look into the eyes of danger and not flinch. That was their strength. A faint snap echoed as the joint yielded slightly. The chain creaked under tension. Lior's heart leapt. But celebration was premature. A patrol drone, alerted by the movement, descended suddenly, its energy net slicing across the rocks. Lior ducked instinctively, barely avoiding the crackling strands. The dragon reacted instantly, snapping its tail and blasting a burst of flame that forced the drone back. Sparks lit the air like fireworks. Zephyr was no longer a prisoner, it was a force waiting to be understood, and Lior realized she was the only one who could do it. She spoke again, softly, this time using gestures, slow and deliberate, pointing to the chain and then to herself. It was risky. Humans had no telepathy, no alien tech to communicate directly with dragons. Only trust and courage. But something inside Zephyr shifted. Its growl softened, a vibration of curiosity rather than aggression. It lowered its massive head slightly, as if acknowledging her presence. Lior's heart surged. Her hands trembled as she applied more leverage to the chain, bending it further. Sweat stung her eyes, but she didn't let go. Every human inch mattered. Every human second mattered. The XYRH could crush her, the chains could burn her, the dragon could flay her alive, but she persisted. Humans were not creatures of brute force alone. They used brains, courage, and instinct. She had all three. The weakened link finally gave way with a loud snap. One small piece of the chain bent enough to allow slight movement. Zephyr reared its head back, flames licking the crater walls. Lior pressed her palm against its scaled snout. Fear surged, the heat, the raw power, the unknown, but determination roared louder. "I want to help you," she whispered again. "I won't let them hurt you." The dragon tilted its head, studying her. Then, unbelievably, it lowered its massive jaws to hover just above her outstretched hand. Sparks and smoke surrounded them, but it made no move to strike. Lior's heart thundered. This was the moment humans were made for, when courage, intellect, and empathy collided against impossible odds. A sudden rumble split the ground. A larger XYRH cruiser appeared above the crater, scanning the area with deadly precision. The dragon hissed, flames curling dangerously. Lior froze, her mind racing. Humans could survive impossible odds because they adapted instantly. She gestured to Zephyr, pointing toward a narrow crevice in the rock face. Slowly, she guided the dragon with careful signals, moving it closer to a place where escape might be possible. Zephyr hesitated, then stepped, massive claws scraping the rock. Sparks flew as its chains groaned. Lior followed, crouched close to its foreleg, adjusting leverage on the metal. The patrol was close now. Every second counted. She had no choice but to continue. Humans were daring enough to move when others froze. Humans turned fear into action. The dragon's rumble grew lower, almost contemplative as it allowed her to guide it. Lior's pulse raced with a mixture of terror and awe. She had reached a fragile understanding with the galaxy's fiercest creature. It could have destroyed her in an instant. Instead, it was trusting her. The XYRH fleet above began moving faster, alerted by the disturbance. Lior's hands burned on the chain, muscles screaming, but she did not relent. One wrong move now and both she and Zephyr would be lost. But one right move, one calculated, courageous act, and humans could claim their first victory in centuries against the alien oppressors. Her gaze met Zephyr's once more, and she whispered with absolute conviction, "We can do this. Together." The dragon's eyes narrowed, a low growl rolling in agreement, or perhaps in challenge. The next move would decide everything. The next moment could be life or death. And yet, for the first time, Lior felt the first spark of hope. A human and a dragon against the odds could change the game entirely. And then, from above, a shadow fell, another patrol, faster, closer, ready to strike. Lior tensed, gripping the chain tighter. Zephyr shifted beside her, wings coiling. The impossible challenge had only just begun. The patrol above hovered like predators circling prey. Lior gritted her teeth, gripping the chains of Zephyr as the dragon flexed its massive wings, smoke curling from its nostrils. Below, the crater floor shuddered with the alien cruiser's approach. The XYRH were relentless. They had no patience, no mercy. And humans were supposed to be insignificant. Lior refused to let that happen. Her mind raced, calculating every angle. Humans survived impossible odds not because they were stronger, but because they thought faster, adapted quicker, and dared where others hesitated. She had studied the patrols, analyzed the cruiser's flight pattern, and memorized every shadow the dragon cast. It wasn't just courage that would save them, it was precision, timing, and intelligence. The first energy bolt screamed past, striking the cliff beside them, sending a shower of sparks and rubble into the air. Zephyr roared, a sound that vibrated deep in Lior's chest. Its tail whipped, sending a shower of rocks at the approaching drone. Lior's heart pounded, but she remained calm, guiding the dragon with subtle gestures she had practiced in the crater. Humans had no innate power over creatures like this. They had understanding, empathy, and strategy. That had to be enough. "Follow my lead," she whispered. Zephyr tilted its massive head, nostrils flaring. Its wings stretched, catching the weak gusts of wind in the crater. Lior climbed onto its shoulder, gripping tightly as the dragon crouched, ready to leap. The cruiser fired again. The blast barely missed. Sparks danced across Zephyr's scales, but it did not falter. Humans did not panic under impossible odds. They adapted and they endured. With a sudden push, Zephyr launched into the air. Rocks and debris tumbled below, smoke trailing behind as the massive wings tore the crater apart. Lior's stomach lurched as they soared upward, dodging energy bolts and slicing between drones. Every maneuver required split-second calculation. The dragon was powerful, but it lacked the instinct to predict alien logic. Lior's mind filled that gap. She called directions, shifted weight, and pointed to gaps in the patrol formation. The dragon obeyed. Together, they became something no XYRH had ever faced, a coordinated, intelligent force. A drone tried to flank them, energy weapons glowing like molten ice. Lior leaned forward, pointing, and Zephyr lunged sideways, flames erupting from its maw. The drone's shields faltered under the heat. A second later, the massive tail swung, shattering the crystalline hull. Sparks rained down, and Lior felt a surge of triumph. Humans could improvise in ways the aliens never imagined. Humans could turn courage and intellect into lethal advantage. But the XYRTH were cunning. A larger cruiser appeared, its hull gleaming black, energy cannons blazing. Lior's chest tightened. There was no margin for error now. One mistake, one hesitation, and they would be obliterated. Her hands tightened around Zypher's spiked shoulder. Humans were not just survivors, they were problem solvers. She scanned the cruiser, noting weak points in the hull, gaps in the targeting system, the angle of fire. She whispered to Zypher, guiding its dive toward the blind spot. The dragon obeyed, tilting sharply. Energy bolts missed them by inches, scorching the rocky walls below. Lior's heart raced, every nerve screaming, but she did not falter. Humans thrived in fear because fear sharpened thought. Each dodge, each maneuver, each blast of fire was calculated, precise. And the XYRTH had underestimated them. Humans could think where logic alone was insufficient. Zypher's roar shook the sky as it unleashed a torrent of flame, striking the cruiser's hull. The metal buckled and sparks flew. Lior leaned forward, guiding the dragon in a coordinated strike toward the cruiser's weak points. Drones collided, shields failed, and for a moment, the impossible seemed within reach. Humans, small and fragile, could manipulate strength far beyond their own through ingenuity and courage. Suddenly, a warning light flashed on the cruiser. Reinforcements were arriving. Lior's stomach dropped. The XYRTH could flood the skies in minutes. But humans did not panic, they adapted. She signaled Zypher to loop around, dive toward the canyon walls, and use the terrain for cover. Flames and smoke erupted as energy bolts struck the cliffs. Rocks cascaded, blocking some of the pursuing drones. Lior's pulse raced, every second a life or death calculation. Below them, the colony's miners watched from hidden tunnels, eyes wide, hearts pounding. A child and a dragon were defying the entire XYRTH fleet. Adults had been paralyzed by fear for decades, yet one human mind, combined with courage and audacity, could turn the tide. Zypher's massive wings tore through the air, and Lior realized something profound. Humans were not tools, not pawns, they were catalysts. A final blast from the main cruiser erupted as Zypher dived straight toward its weak point, flames striking the hull in a precise burst. Sparks and molten metal flew in all directions. Lior's fingers dug into the dragon's scales as the cruiser shuddered, systems failing. The patrol drones scattered, retreating. Zypher reared into the sky, wings extended in triumph, carrying the human child above the shattered battlefield. Lior exhaled, a mixture of relief, exhilaration, and awe flooding her senses. They had survived. Humans had survived. Not because they were stronger, but because they refused to surrender. The impossible had been faced and overcome through courage, intelligence, and determination. But as Zypher circled the crater, Lior's eyes scanned the horizon. More cruisers would come. The XYRTH were relentless. The galaxy was vast and the fight was far from over. She realized the battle today had been just the first step. Humans could win, but only if they continued to act where others hesitated, to adapt where others relied on brute force, and to lead with courage when fear threatened to paralyze them. For the first time the colony dared to hope. And for the first time in millennia, Zypher was free, if only temporarily. The roar of the dragon echoed across the cliffs, a sound that shook the sky and hearts alike. Lior felt the weight of what lay ahead, but also the surge of possibility. Humans could do this. Humans could survive, adapt, and fight back, even against an empire built on cruelty and logic. And somewhere deep within the void, the XYRTH fleet regrouped, their logic calculating, their minds already planning the next strike. The galaxy had changed. The humans had changed. And the impossible was no longer certain. The sky over Thyra 7 was scorched and smoky, a battlefield of fire and shattered rock. Zypher circled high above the crater, massive wings stirring clouds of ash. Below, the XYRTH fleet had been forced to retreat, battered and confused. Lior Kane hung onto the dragon's scaled shoulder, her small body pressed against its heat-radiating hide, breathing heavily. Every muscle in her arms and legs ached, but she had never felt more alive. Humans had survived against impossible odds. For a long moment, silence fell over the colony. The miners emerged from their tunnels, faces pale, mouths open, eyes wide in disbelief. They had watched a child and a dragon defy the Empire, destroy enemy patrols, and send ships fleeing across the void. Lior's heart swelled, not with pride exactly, but with the quiet, steady knowledge that humans could matter, even when everything seemed hopeless. Zypher landed heavily, sending a tremor through the ground. Rocks and dust cascaded around them. Lior slid off its shoulder, knees scraping on the crater floor, and stared into its glowing, molten eyes. The dragon lowered its massive head, smoke curling from its nostrils. Its gaze was no longer just fierce, it was attentive, almost contemplative. Lior reached out slowly, one trembling hand touching the jagged scales along its jaw. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I said I wouldn't let them hurt you." The dragon rumbled deeply, a vibration that Lior felt in her chest. It nudged her gently with its snout, massive claws scraping the rock beside her. In that moment she understood something profound: they were not just allies, they were partners. Humans could survive, but humans could also inspire, create, and lead. The impossible could bend to courage and intellect. The XYRH fleet, regrouping in orbit, sent one final warning, energy beams slicing through the atmosphere, shaking the ground. Lior looked up. Most humans would have panicked. Most humans would have cowered. But she didn't. Humans thrived in fear when they chose to act. She turned to Zephyr and whispered, "We're not done. Let's make them remember why they fear us." The dragon growled, wings unfurling like the sails of a mighty ship. Lior climbed back onto its shoulder, bracing herself against the powerful muscles beneath her. Together they lifted into the sky, weaving between flashes of alien fire and clouds of ash. Lior shouted directions, guiding the dragon with precision that only a human mind could provide. They weren't just fighting, they were shaping the battlefield. The colony below watched as the dragon and child became one unstoppable force. Energy beams struck the crater walls, rocks exploded, and yet Zephyr dodged, dived, and lashed with a precision that stunned the aliens. Lior leaned forward, eyes bright, shouting commands in human clarity. Every movement mattered, every calculation counted. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, but because they could think faster, adapt better, and refuse to yield. Then came the moment of truth. A massive XYRH cruiser surged ahead, energy cannons glowing white-hot, intent on obliteration. Lior's mind raced. She noticed the weak points in the hull, the gaps in the shield timing, the patterns the aliens repeated without variation. "Now Zephyr. Straight to the side," she shouted. The dragon dived, twisting midair. Flames erupted, striking the hull precisely. Sparks flew. The cruiser shuddered, systems failing, then crashed into the crater edge, shaking the ground with a thunderous roar. Silence returned, broken only by Zephyr's deep rumble and the crackling of smoldering debris. The XYRH fleet retreated, disorganized and shaken. Humans had won, but not with brute force alone. They had triumphed with courage, intellect, and determination. Lior slid off Zephyr's shoulder, knees trembling, and looked around at the miners emerging from the shadows. Their faces were wet with tears, awe, and hope. "Humans," one elder whispered, voice trembling. "They've shown us what we are." Lior smiled faintly. She was only a child, but she felt the weight of generations in that moment. Humans had been written off, dismissed, seen as insignificant in a galaxy of monsters and tyrants. Yet here she stood, proof that one mind, one heart could change everything. Humans did not wait for salvation. Humans became it. Zephyr lowered its massive head, nudging her again. Lior stroked its scales, feeling the heat, the power, and the intelligence radiating from the creature. Somewhere deep in its eyes was understanding, a recognition that humans were capable of something no other species had yet achieved. Courage could awaken trust. Determination could inspire action. Morality could shape choices. Humanity, fragile and small in the vastness of space, had made itself a force to be reckoned with. For the first time in history, the legend of humans spread across the stars. Not as prey, not as slaves, but as catalysts. One child had defied an empire, tamed the galaxy's fiercest dragon, and sparked hope in the hearts of countless beings who had never dared to hope. The twin suns rose again over Thyra 7, illuminating the crater in soft gold and crimson. The smoke and fire still lingered, reminders of the battle fought and won. Lior climbed back onto Zephyr's shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon. More challenges awaited, more dangers, more impossible odds. But she no longer felt fear. Humans thrived where others faltered. Humans endured. Humans acted. And somewhere deep in the void, the XYRH would calculate their next move, but they would remember the lesson they had just learned. Humans were not to be underestimated. Courage, intelligence, and heart could shatter chains, ignite hope, and reshape the galaxy. Lior Kane gripped Zephyr's scales tightly and whispered, "This is only the beginning." The dragon roared in agreement, a sound that echoed across the valleys and stars alike. Humans had risen. Humans had fought. Humans had won. and the galaxy would never be the same again.